So an example of one that we had decided to digitize, and we just found it. You can see that there are lots of different sizes of paper here. It's not shifted. Actually, all the tops sort of line up. They're just extremely different sizes. Not all of these pamphlets actually go together content-wise. They were just sewn together. So this is one that was better for us to just disbind and then be able to keep each little pamphlet separated in its own folder. So again, a previous repair that, if you really want to remove this, you're going to have the proper hand tools and chemicals to be able to do that, and it's just going to cause too much damage. So, brittle documents, there's really going to be nothing you can do for a brittle document except just try to handle it very carefully. It's going to be very fragile to scan. Chances are they'll have pieces that'll crumble off or corners that'll break off. It's also going to be hard to keep that collected. So the more that you can get scanned before any pieces break off, the better. Any small damage, such as a tear, is going to worsen as you handle it. And again, there's little you can do. If you've identified it as being brittle, it's going to require extreme caution. It could even just crumble. And the darker it is, that tends to mean the more acidic the paper. So this picture of the book here, you can just see that these edges face the binding, and they're just completely cracking off the binding. So, mold. I did not bring a sample of mold. I'm not going to bring a sample of mold. And I really hope that you don't encounter it. If you think that a document has mold or just some type of spotting that you aren't sure what it is, definitely bring it up to your supervisor or whoever is in charge, because you don't want to be handling these. They need to be treated prior to scanning, and if you're interacting with this item, not only could you get yourself sick, but there's chances that you could get this on other documents and other texts that ruin them. If you do notice that you think a document has mold, then you want to wash your hands. You want to wash surfaces this document touched, but when you wash it or clean it, use like a rag with some sort of cleaning spray that actually kills mold. You don't want to take like a brush and brush the surface off, because if mold spores came off of it, you just scattered it into the air, you're going to breathe it in, you're going to get it on things. Keep it isolated from your other materials until a specialist or somebody else can take a look at it and let you know what's going on. If the spots seem fuzzy or powdery, it could still be active, so just be careful not to breathe it in. So really, any spots that you see, just take care. Mold is not something to be handled lightly. Physical damage from handling during scanning. So I've talked about damage that's already been done to the book just because of age or previous conditions, but I want to go over damage that could happen because of how it's handled during the scanning process. Time pressures and every part of the page has to be exposed could cause damage. The fact that if you're trying to rush things and knowing that you need to be able to see that entire page means that it's just upping the chance that you're going to cause damage. Again, we went over this early on, but if the document itself is not being fully supported on the scanner, and if the edges hang over, it could be injured, it could get bent, something could just touch it and it could crack off. So try to make sure that your item stays fully supported at all times. Now again, if you are using a lid, some scanners are set up so that there's a glass plate. The ones we actually have at Pitt have a glass plate that come down over top of it, which is why it says that. So a glass plate or a lid, again, this can stress the binding or any fastenings that are on it, which could result in cracking, especially for photographic materials. You want to be very careful with the photographic materials. Traveling through scanner, luckily you guys don't have to worry about this. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. You would never want to put documents like this through some sort of feeder or roller, because that's just going to give it license to tear and leave marks and indentations or ruin your photocopier or something. So just don't do it. Don't even think about it. Light damage. There's usually not a lot of risk involved with light damage if you're scanning something once or just twice. If you were scanning the same pages over and over and over again, then then you are causing damage to it. In the museum, you see where they have signs say, please don't take flash photography. It's the same purpose. You're going to cause fading and deterioration of the paper from that light flash. But it's still good to minimize exposure when you can, even though you aren't scanning it very often. When you have your documents that you're working on, don't leave them out under lights while you're getting the scanner set up and calibrated. Again, that goes back to leaving everything in the folders and boxes until you're actually ready to use it. Keep the items covered while you're moving them around, and then filtering UV light out. So depending on where you're working, you might be near windows, and whether or not you know if there's a filter that's been placed over top of the glass to keep the UV light out, just be aware that there's UV light there. Again, not setting your documents out to absorb that light, because that's the most harmful to documents. And again, exposure to heat from the machine, especially the glass plate, could be harmful to the documents, and most particularly to photographs. Format damage. So format damage from scanning, really the biggest thing is disassociation. I mentioned that earlier, but this is really the prime word for it, is the risk that your documents could get mixed up with other documents during the imaging process. They could end up getting repacked into the wrong boxes, or the sequence of the document could get disturbed, and in worst case, your documents could actually be lost. So this is definitely a danger when you're removing fastenings or you're removing a binding or something. So be especially careful with that aspect of it if you're taking apart something that's been bound. And really, the best rule to keep in mind for all of this is don't set unrealistic goals for yourself. Of how fast you're going to go and how many documents you're going to get through. And it's great that we have this goal. What if we got through this and we scanned even more than that? Well, that's going to increase the risk to your documents. Work with the time that you have and how much care you have to put into that document, and the documents are going to survive a lot better. And that's it. So, does anybody have any questions about handling or scanning or anything of that nature? Yeah.
You mentioned that fastenings could cause damage to your copier. How would you deal with that? Would you put spots in the fastening?
You could, as long as there's no text or information right around that fastening. You could put some other sheet of paper down so the fastening would just lie on top of that as you're scanning it, or some type of cloth. But yeah, as long as you are careful. And part of it too is you don't want to be sliding the document around on it. If you've got a metal fastener and you're moving it, that's going to scratch it, as well as you're hurting the document by doing that. So I think a lot of times if you're just careful about placing, picking it fully up, setting it down, removing it, and not trying to shift things around, yeah, if there's no information around the fastener, you could do that.
So you mentioned photographs, and it seems like they're sometimes don't just crinkle up themselves.
Yeah.
I think I went to a photograph, I don't know if it was preservation or something related to photographs, and they said that photographs are just like a terrible archival thing, almost as guys as scrapbooks that are put together with some kind of organic and paste.
Yeah.
Because there's something about them, there are all these different things together, and they're all on.
There are, and what the problem too is that there are so many different types of photographic prints, and it's hard to know how to identify what kind it is, what's the best treatment for that individual type. There's usually the base, you've got the emulsion layer, and there's just too many things that are in contact with each other, and they do tend to degrade a lot faster. Nowadays, a lot of our prints are meant to hold up a lot longer and not have quite so many problems, but even still, if those are exposed to a lot of fluctuations in humidity and temperature, then they're going to get damaged just as easily as well. So I think that's usually the trickier part with photographs, is you can't be sure what it's been made of. So,
and something you addressed when you were with Historic Society that is, what if you have a photograph that is is framed under glass and you don't know anything about it? What do you do with that?
Yeah, normally if it's in a frame, I would try to remove it at first. Ultimately it's not going to be stored in the best conditions if left in the frame, and you're not going to be able to digitize it easily if it's in the frame. So The best thing to do is to go really slow, try to take it apart, obviously starting from the back. And if you get any hint that you are meeting resistance, the photo seems stuck to any of the paper around it or onto the glass itself, don't go further, because all that's going to do is it's going to tear up pieces that are going to remain stuck to the glass, and then you've got a photo with missing material on it, and you would really have to have a trained conservator who may or may not be able to repair it. So for that, if it does seem, pretty loose, it's coming right off the glass, then you're in good shape. But if there's any resistance at all, just leave it. Or if you even notice that some of the edges seem a little bit sticky and it's not necessarily fully adhered to the glass but sticky, we may still want to leave it because there could be a section in the middle that you can't see that's completely stuck down. And the edges, they're fine, they're not sticking, I'm just going to pull it up. Well, now the whole middle of the photograph's gone. So, yeah. So usually it's just to proceed with caution, do your best with it, and any resistance, just leave it be.
Well, if there's no other questions, thank you so much. Thank you for coming, and thank you so much for
Yes.
this is perfect.
Okay.